Welcome to another episode of Nightmare Stories of the Otherside. Tonight we welcome in Ronnie D. So, Ronnie, would you like to give us a little background about yourself?
Oh, sure. My name is Ronnie. I've been in the paranormal for about 25 years now. Started out pretty much just like anybody else, kind of in that quest to figure out what was in the afterlife, if there was even such a thing. Family and I traveled all over the United States, going to various locations like Waverly Hills and our locations and that kind of good stuff, and just progressed into becoming a building owner.
So, when you started out, what really got you into the field? Was it an experience you had, or from somebody else, or something that you heard about?
I think it was a combination of what other people had told me, and I think about 25 years ago is when the shows started becoming kind of popular. So I know that we kind of started watching some of the shows, and I think mostly it was because I was kind of like, yeah, BS. Like I really, really kind of thought most of it was like BS,
Yeah,
and kind of thought it was, Hollywood, putting a show on, and especially when you were watching some of these shows and they would do like EVPs and they'd be like, and you're kind of like, oh, come on. So I think we just went out and tried it, and I think on our first hunt we were successful and got our own EVPs and saw some various things happening. And I think like most of us, you just kind of get hooked. You have that first experience, and it gets to the point where you want more and more and more and more, and it progressed all the way up to finally owning a couple of my own locations.
yeah, I can relate to that. Like when I went on my first investigation, it's like when we were leaving, it was like, when do I get to do this again?
Right?
It's just like at first you go into it, it's like, do I really want to go? Do I really want to do this? But then yeah, by the end of the first night, you're just like instantly hooked.
Well, and then what's really scary, we were just talking off air about how you come down to Chicago or up, yeah, down to Chicago. You're from the north, you come down from Chicago. And so, as a paranormal investigator and a building owner, the first thing you're doing is you're looking at these old creepy buildings, with people in your car going, oh, I bet that building's haunted. Bet that
Right?
building's haunted. Bet that building's haunted. And like I said, it becomes kind of an addiction because like, yeah, the quest for knowledge and the quest to find out if the locations that you're looking at are truly, truly haunted. And I think what's really, really unique about doing the investigations is that it doesn't seem like what building, like any building can be haunted.
Oh yeah.
It could be, anything from a schoolhouse, like for our schoolhouse to, to a regular hospital like ours, or even something like a tuberculosis hospital like, Waverly Hills. I just think it's really unique and fascinating that, there's such a gamut of different locations that you can go investigate in, and they all seem to have some kind of activity.
Yeah, like for our team next week on Easter, we're going to be at Edinburgh Manor in Iowa. And then the following weekend, Friday and Saturday, we're going to be at Farrar and then at an old YMCA in Rock Island, Illinois. So we're going to get three different aspects of buildings in 1 week.
Well, and one of the most interesting things that you guys probably don't know is my group was actually the first group to ever actually investigate Edinburgh.
Really?
Yeah, we were really good friends with the old caretakers, Josh and his wife. Oh, I always forget her name. She's going to kill Katie. Josh and Katie. We became very, very good friends with them, and it was to the point where I live in Chicago and I live in Tennessee as well, but I'm only about 3 hours from Edinburgh. So Josh would call me like on a Saturday night, and he's like, "Hey, we're not booked. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Nothing, sitting on the couch." He says, "Get in the car and get over here." So I grab a friend of mine and we get in the car and head over to Edinburgh. And oh, we had some just incredible experiences at that location. But I remember we're like either the first or second group that ever investigated there. And the night we were there on our first investigation ever there, it was crazy. We had some really awesome experiences there.
Yeah, that was my first ever investigation. And it's like, so I was going in totally blind. My friend's team I was with, they had all the equipment. I just had my camera with, and we were there only like probably 5 minutes, and we heard kids running and laughing up and down the halls. We're like, did you guys hear that? And it wasn't like a super active night, but as I said, it was enough to get me hooked.
Right. But see, that's the thing I find always, as a building owner, that's the thing that I always find really, really kind of fascinating is that we'll have a group come in. Like I said, we've been in Edinburgh a lot of times. So we'll have a group come in and they're like, so how was your night? And they're like, oh, it was kind of slow. Well, what happened? well, we got three EVPs. We saw a full body apparition. We footsteps, and they go on and on. I'm like, and that was a slow night. I'm like, dude, that's pretty impressive. I know the first night we were at Edinburgh Manor, we were in, and the hall, the hallway where the pool table is, right?
Yeah.
To the left of that is the staircase. Well, we were actually running cables to our camera system, down that staircase. And my buddy and I were standing there, and we heard a distinct conversation going on to the point where my buddy and I actually stopped and we got on the walkie-talkies to find out where the rest of the team was. And it was that distinct and that loud. And we found out that the rest of the team was actually in the front of the building and they were, carrying more equipment into the building. And that was our first night as a team there. And I remember my buddy Jay and I were kind of looking at each other like, oh, this is going to be a great night. And yeah, Edinburgh didn't disappoint. I mean, it was a really cool location.
Yeah. One of the craziest things that happened to me that night, it was about 10 o'clock. My buddy Griff and I were sitting in the one room on the third floor where there's the table with the puzzle on it.
Hmm?
And it's like I had my phone in silent and airplane mode, and both my daughters were, trying to get a hold of me saying they were going to bed, and my phone was actually ringing
Oh,
to
wow.
let me know that they were calling. I'm like, I go to him, I go, what is that noise? He goes, dude, that's your phone. I'm like, no, it can't be. And I looked, and sure enough, it was my phone. So
We
the
had, we
students
had
wanted me to, know the kids were trying to get a hold of me.
we had great experiences. I know we've got a couple of times to Edinburgh, and what we would do a lot of times is go for lunch, or we got there really early. Like I said, we were really good friends with the caretakers, so it wasn't uncommon for us to get there at noon and leave, 2 or 3 o'clock the next day until the other group there. And a lot of times we go into town, 500 miles away, it seemed like.
Right. Yeah.
But we leave, for a couple hours, and we just leave our voice recorders in the hallway. And it was really fascinating to come back and listen to voices or doors opening and closing, or I mean, it was really, like I said, it's a real special place over there.
It is. So
Oh, I'm
now,
excited.
yeah, it'll be
I've
Carrie's
been there.
first time there.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody that's going with us from my team that can make it, nobody's been there before. I'm the only one.
It's a special place, and I think it's one of those kind of locations that are kind of stuck in time as well too. So when you pull in, it shows old. I mean,
Yep.
it's I think it closed in 2005. Am I right?
If I remember right, yeah.
It's like 2005, I think. So, but I mean, it's still you go in and the paint is kind of peeling off the walls. And I remember going into the basement where they have the what do you call the ceiling fans? How they're all droopy and
Yep.
the humidity. So it's like that kind of creepy, cool kind of feeling.
Oh yeah.
Just a really neat location until you realize it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're out in the boondocks and the neighborhood kids are running out in the backyard yelling and screaming. Like becomes a little unraveling at times, but yeah, that place always had a really special place in my heart.
Yeah. So I'm definitely excited to get back. It'll be my third time there.
Fun, fun, fun.
So let's jump to the when you first started, what was the first location you investigated?
The first location we actually investigated was called Hillview Manor, out in New
Nice.
Castle, Pennsylvania. I became friends with the caretaker out there as well too. But yeah, that was the first place we ever investigated. I think my daughter she was really young. You're not supposed to take children on investigations with you, but she didn't want to stay home. So I think we were out there, and she was setting up one of the cameras in the men's ward at Hillview. And I remember looking at, I don't know if you have children or not, but when you look at your daughter and something's wrong, and I'm looking at her from a distance. Remember, this is broad daylight. We're like putting up cameras, and she kind of turned white. She's like, "Daddy," and I'm like, "What?" She says, "There's a man in here," and I was like, "No way!" I thought somebody broke in or something like that. So of course, Daddy puts his daddy, cape on, and I
Yeah.
go running down the hall, thinking, who am I going to beat up? It's my daughter, got to protect my daughter. And lo and behold, I'm standing there and she's kind of staring at the wall. And I'm like, I don't see what you're talking about. She says, what do you mean you can't see him? And she's like describing this man that I can't see at all. And so I was kind of like, okay. So then it was kind of unique because so if you've ever been to Hillview Manor, it's kind of a hallway, and on the left side there's a cafeteria for the men. On the right side there's a cafeteria for the women, and she was kind of in that hallway. and she was kind of looking through the doorway into the men's cafeteria. Well, as I got closer and I actually looked into the doorway, I actually got a glimpse of what she was talking about, and the man just disappeared. And I was like, and this was our first investigation. And I was like, wow, that was just pretty amazing. And then, like I said, since then we were just hooked. I mean, my daughter was all revved up about it. She graduated college and she actually started a paranormal team, actually paranormal like training team at her college she graduated from. So yeah, so we were pretty deep in the paranormal. We really, really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
So after that, what was the next location you investigated?
Oh, I don't remember. I know that we started. I think we started watching shows, and I think we went to. I think there was a place in Iowa that we headed out to, and I'm not going to remember the name because it's long since closed down. But I think the top floor was where the man supposedly hung himself, and I forgot what it was called. So we went out there, um, and then we went to. I know we went to Waverly Hills a couple times. We pretty much went pretty much everywhere. I mean, it got like I said, it got to be kind of an addiction that we just started going places, and then we got to the point where we started actually knocking on doors of places that looked haunted and or active, and yeah, just knocked on doors, and it was really surprising how many locations that we got into where people were kind of like, yeah, we've had experiences here, come on in. And so yeah, we did in Chicago here. We did a couple of locations that were actually in Chicago. One of them was a place where they changed tires. And they let us in to do an investigation there. They said that they'd see shadow figures and that kind of stuff. So we got into there. But yeah, just kind of all over. I know we went from pretty much coast to coast, border to border, and just kind of had a blast with it.
So what are some experiences you had at Waverly Hills?
I don't. I I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I've been there about 8 times, 6 or 8 times now. I have never had an experience at Waverly Hills.
Really?
Yes, and you know what? I don't blame it on Waverly Hills. I mean, I think it's a building that just doesn't like me. I don't know if the
Oh,
spirits don't like me or I don't know. But yeah, I was actually there about a year and a half ago. We went in spring and thought I'd give it another try, and not even as much as an EVP. I mean, yeah,
Crazy.
it was crazy. And like I said, it's I don't blame it on the building. It's just me. For some odd reason, they just don't like me there.
hmm.
So yeah, and that's the Mecca, which is kind of sad. That's like kind of the Mecca of the paranormal. You know, everyone's like,
Yeah.
gotta go to Waverly, gotta go to Waverly. I'm like, not been there, nothing for me. But I've had a lot of friends too who have gone and had experiences, and I've had friends that have gone and had no experiences. And I think a lot of it really is just on, you meshing on with that location and
Yeah.
just just doesn't mesh with me. Like I
Hmm.
said, nothing against Waverly Hills, nothing against the spirits there or the residents there. It's just a location that for some odd reason just isn't active for me.
That's
It is
insane.
beautiful, but I will tell you, anybody who's in the paranormal, whether you have an experience or not, I remember the first time pulling up there and seeing the building and the gargoyles and just the vast enormity of the building is money well spent.
Oh,
I mean,
definitely.
pulling up in that parking lot for your first experience, I remember looking up and just my mouth dropped and I was like, wow. And then you get in and it's just really a neat location. So anybody who's in the paranormal and even people who aren't in the paranormal who just want to go visit, a very historic location, you're
Hmm.
not going to eat Waverly Hills.
Yeah, my
Hmm.
daughter and I were there last summer for one of their junior investigations, and we get let in at 11:30 at night. We're there till 6 in the morning. But yeah, as you said, just pulling up is just like this is awesome.
It is. It really is. I mean, if people listening to this broadcast and if they've never had the opportunity to go, if there's one place you want to put on your bucket list, just to go hang out and look at even the architecture. I mean,
Oh yeah,
just the building is just amazing. I mean, it is absolutely stunning. And I know the owners of that location are great people. They put a lot of money and time into it, and it shows. But yeah, it's just like I said, it's just an amazing location.
but yeah, we're going back there in June, and I got a couple people from the Chicago area joining with us. And I was telling, I go, you're gonna find when you're there, the bathrooms are amazing for a haunted location. Those bathrooms are like fancy.
Yeah, I think they spent like $40,000 just in the bathrooms alone. It is
Yeah,
it is pretty amazing with the slate. I think it's
Wow.
what slate tile on the walls and
yeah.
yeah, That's pretty. It is pretty amazing. So, what was your favorite thing about Waverly Hills? The bathrooms.
Yeah, or let's see what else. Going down, well, I didn't go down to the bottom of the death tunnel, but my daughter did.
Oh, did you?
She was only one of three people from the our tour group that went all the way down to the bottom.
And which is the easy part. It's coming back. That's hard.
Yeah, it's like I only went like halfway down and I was exhausted. I'm like, nope, I'm good.
Yeah, the incline on that can be quite challenging, especially for us old fat guys, right?
Or out of shape, yeah, for sure. So, what are some other notable locations that you've been to and experiences you had?
Well, Edinburgh Manor, Hillview Manor is probably one of my favorites. Well, we got to bring in the locations that I own.
Oh, of course.
We own South Pittsburgh Hospital in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee, and then just recently we purchased Harriman Hospital in Harriman, Tennessee. They're about 2 hours apart from each other. One is actually dead middle South Tennessee, and the other one is more eastern Tennessee. And it's funny because on all the years of hunting and investigating and going to, everywhere, I think the experiences you have are really fascinating and unique. But once you own your own location, it's a whole different story. Like, I can tell, and I don't usually do this because people think we're crazy. But if there isn't a day that doesn't go by that we don't have some sort of experience while we're working on the building, it's a slow day. But generally, I think building owners and the people who work in them, we have such a connection with our residents that they're not real shy. They come hang out with us. And like a really good example is one of the coolest experiences I think I've ever had was when we first bought OSPH in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. And we had a gentleman, his name was Daniel, who worked for me for a while, who now is doing New Star Productions, which is really cool. He does his own thing now. But we were on the third floor and we wanted to shut the water off on the third floor. We wanted to cut the main off. And primarily the reason is they use old cast iron pipes, and if the cast iron pipes aren't being utilized, they actually start to rot. So you turn the water on, and all that water ends up draining onto the second floor, and it's just a mess. So we wanted to turn the water off on the third floor, and we were having just a hell of a time trying to find the water main. So Daniel and I were at one end of the building, the opposite end of the ORs, and Daniel was really funny because just for a goof, he kind of yells out, "Does anybody know where the water main is?" And you hear on the other end of the hospital, "It's over here."
Oh,
I
nice.
remember Daniel and I kind of looking at each other. Remember, this is like the first or second week I owned the building. And Daniel and I looked at each other and I was like, no way. I'm like, there's just no way. Somebody's like, playing a prank on us. It was so clear and it was so intelligent and so responsive that Daniel and I were like, so Daniel and I walked over to the location that we heard the voice, and Daniel is like 6'2" or 6'4". I mean, he's a really tall guy. But he basically lifted up the ceiling tile of where we heard the voice coming from, and lo and behold, there's the water main.
Oh,
Wow.
that's
Like kind of looking
awesome.
at,
Very
it gets
helpful.
better. It gets better. So we're looking up at the water main. Daniel moves the tile over, and he kind of comes down, turns around, and he goes, "Thank you." And you hear, "You're welcome," and footsteps walking away from us.
Oh, nice.
And
Wow.
Daniel looked at me and he says, "Glad you bought the building, aren't you?" And I was like, that was just incredible. And I think what's really funny is if you sit down and talk to a lot of the building owners, we have experiences like that on a pretty regular occasion. Because I think our residents actually realize that we're trying to save history and trying to keep their homes nice and clean and all that other good stuff. So it's really kind of a neat situation. So since I've owned South Pittsburgh Hospital, I bought it to be my eighth year there. I haven't really been anywhere other than some, Paracons. And like I said, I think we went to Waverly a couple times in the last couple of years with friends. But really, I think I get so much evidence and experiences just being in our own locations that are really personally lost, the number one, the time, but the interest to be anywhere else because I have kind of have my own, I guess, field to play in now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it just it's hard to go anywhere else. And like I said, I think the thing that's really unique is that we get to know a lot of our residents by name and that kind of a thing. So we get a lot of interaction when we're calling out with Jim or Nellie or some of the residents that we're aware of that inhabit the building.
So, what's some of the history of the building that you know of?
So there's two separate ones, obviously. In South Pittsburgh Hospital was built in 1958. It was built as as a clinic. It started as a clinic, and they called it the South Pittsburgh Municipal Hospital. And then it had the Tri-City Clinic, which is to the left of it. When it originally opened, it was around about 30,000 square feet. It had two operating rooms. It had an emergency room, and then it had a dental office as well as observation rooms in it. It grew and grew and grew really quickly. And what was really unique about, and I don't know, me being from the North, I never really realized this, but a lot of the hospitals that are in the South are very, very community orientated, especially South Pittsburgh. South Pittsburgh, when they wanted to do addition, they actually went to their citizens and tried to get money. They did buy bonds through, city bonds and that kind of thing, but a lot of the money was actually put up by the citizens themselves. They went, and I know when they put one of the wings on the hospital, the actual people of South Pittsburgh and the surrounding communities actually the ones who actually furnished a lot of the hospital. And I thought that was really, really unique. They would put like newspaper articles out that say, South Pittsburgh Hospital, we're expanding. We need money for this, that, or whatever. And people would call. They'd come calling and helping. So I think that's one of the reasons why, especially in the South, the hospitals are so active. It's because they're not only a place where people would, get health, but they would also hang out there on a Saturday afternoon. I've got pictures of our cafeteria when the hospital was actually open, and the fire marshal would have a field day today.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure.
they were so crowded that people were literally elbow to elbow eating in these tiny little cafeteria. And they were there talking about how Johnny hit a home run and Betsy's in cheerleading and Saturdays and Sundays it became a community place where everybody hung out. And from my understanding, South Pittsburgh actually had really good food too. But yeah, so it was a real community standard. And I think when you take the good and the bad of a hospital, and then you take the community that's there all the time. I mean, you've got a building that's got so much energy in it. It's just waiting, for the stories to be told. And I learned that, up here in the North where I'm from, it doesn't work that way. We're not the same way up here as they are down South. I mean, you drive through South Pittsburgh and everybody knows you. I mean, I get pointed at and waved at, and we'll be downtown eating dinner, and somebody walk up to me and go, "Oh, you're the guy who owns the hospital. My aunt was born there," and trying to have a spaghetti dinner, and 2.5 hours later, I know the whole family and everything, and I think that's really really unique, and I think that's one of the things that's really special about the locations down south, and I think that's one of the reasons why they are so active, is because there's so much love and caring and all that stuff put in there, and there's trauma that goes with it, but I just think that they're very, very, very big parts of the communities until they close down, and a guy like me comes along and buys them and opens up for paranormal investigating.
So, what are some other experiences you've had there?
South Pittsburgh, I've got a list of them. Holy cow! My first, initially, I was going to South Pittsburgh prior to owning it. We investigated there probably about 4 times a year, I want to say. And one of the coolest experiences I ever had was it was one of those slow nights that we talked about earlier, is there really wasn't anything going on. We weren't getting AVPs. There was really a whole lot of nothing going on. So one of our teammates was like, "Hey, let's go up to the third floor." And because one of the claims of the hospital is the last baby there was born in 1986. The building closed in 1999. But even after the closure of birthing babies, they would hear babies crying in the nursery on the third floor. Like we have talked to RNs there. We have talked to the gentleman who ran the lab there, and they all heard babies crying on the third floor. So we wanted to see if we can make that claim come true as well too. So we went up to the third floor. I think it was probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. It was one of those times where it was, like I said, we didn't get much of anything. It was one of those really slow nights. So he put his iPhone on the glass for the what do you call it, for the nursery, and he started a baby crying. So we're sitting there, and I would say within probably 2 minutes, minute and a half, we see a full body apparition come from the nurse's station. She walked right in front of us, stopped, kind of stared at me, went over to my buddy, kind of stared at him, and then walked through, actually opened the door and walked into the nursery and just disappeared. And I remember that was one of my buddy's first ever investigations. He was kind of new to the team. And I remember reaching over for him because I was a little uncomfortable at that point in time. I reach over for him, and he's just gone. I'm on the third floor all by myself in a building at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was just like, whoa. So we ran downstairs to where they had the break room, and we kind of discussed it. And he was like, "Yeah, I saw exactly what you saw." And I remember it was a really chilling, cool night. And I think the thing that was really unique about it was is that it wasn't a residual haunt. It was definitely an intelligent haunt because she actually stopped and looked at us as if to say, "You're here after hours,
Yeah.
Mhm.
visiting hours."
Wow.
I mean, it was a stern kind of get off my floor look. And yeah, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And I think what was really neat is that we had Kindred Spirits. They had come out and they had actually did a show there, and they had caught what they believe was the nurse making the same round. And you can see the pixelation on the show, and they pointed out and all the other stuff. But it was the identical path that she had taken when we were there from the nurse's station into the nursery. So it was kind of neat to have some validation when you have Amy Bruni and Adam Berry out there to do their investigation.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
I think that was one of the most wild things we ever did. And that was prior to owning the hospital. I remember my buddy's like, we need to buy this hospital. So I had called the owners of the hospital the next morning and I said, I want to buy the hospital. What do I need to do to buy the hospital? And they were like, yeah, it's not for sale. It's not for sale. And so we ended up purchasing it down the road anyways. But yeah, it was just such a moment in time where you're like, wow, this is really what paranormal investigating is about. It was
Mhm.
that moment in time where you're like, not only did I get to see a full body apparition, but she recognized the fact that we were in her space and that we shouldn't have been there, and she didn't want us there. And so yeah, so that was a really 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 interesting experience. My second experience, well, actually, I've had two experiences. We have a resident. His name is Jim, and Jim is on the first floor. After the hospital had shut down, Jim had become the caretaker of the building. Him and a couple of his buddies actually lived in the hospital on the first floor, where Jim had passed away of diabetic shock. He actually passed away on the floor in his room. And Jim was said to have stuck around even after his death there at the hospital. What was really unique about it is the old caretakers of the building told some really bad stories about him. A lot of stuff that wasn't really true. If you guys go online, I won't mention it here, but you can do the research. But they talked really badly about him, like really badly. And we found out that a lot of the stuff that was online and being said about him wasn't really true. But myself and a young lady named Renee were actually standing in the lobby, which was kind of right outside the door of his apartment. And we were chatting with him. And at the time, I had pretty shoulder length hair. I was a rebel back then. Now I'm a good business owner with short hair. Um, but so Renee and I were talking, and we were talking about Jim, and we were talking about some of the things that I had learned through the old caretakers and how supposedly bad he was. And I remember Renee were a couple feet apart from each other, and we were talking face to face. And all of a sudden, I felt somebody grab the back of my long hair and just yank my head back so hard that it snapped. And when I came back up, I looked in Renee's eyes, and she was like in shock. Like literally, her face was white. Her eyes were as big as saucers. And I'm like, did that just really happen? And she's like, yeah. She says, I saw your hair get bunched up and I saw your hair go back. And I was like,
Wow.
wow. And so we kept talking and we said, oh, it's got to be Jim. It's got to be because we were kind of in his area. And about maybe 2.5 minutes later, it happened for the second time. And he did the same identical thing. And I was like, I looked at Renee and I said, well, something's not right here. I mean, he's trying to get our attention. Like, and I really don't know what it is. Well, it was neat because we were talking about some of the things that we had heard about him from the old owners and the old caretakers. Um, And if you've ever been to Old South Pittsburgh before, we took it over. The back room was where Jim kept a lot of his garbage, just a lot of his stuff that he had. And so a young lady and I named Candace actually decided one night that we were going to go through his stuff because it was all back there. And what we learned was 90% of what we were told was completely made up and a complete lie. One of the stories that we heard was Jim was gay and that he was very aggressive towards women. He didn't like women. He was whatever, just not a very pleasant man and 100% gay. So we were back there and we're going through his paperwork and we pull out a bunch of emails and we pull out a bunch of screenshots of stuff that he was doing online. And the first thing we pull out is a piece of paper that says his name and a dating website. And it says, I haven't met the woman of my dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Candace and I kind of looked at each other like, well, wait a minute here, he's gay. What gay man is looking for, the woman of his dreams? So we kind of went through a lot of his paperwork and realized that Jim was never gay. He was 100% straight and he was looking for a woman and was a very lonely man. And so once we started going through a lot of his stuff, we realized that a lot of that stuff was just really made up to sell the building and to sell people to get him in there. And it's really unique because now if you come to Old South Pittsburgh and you go to Jim's apartment, which we haven't changed really much, and you do like EVPs or you do some stuff, he's a very cool classic rock fan and he will actually interact with you. One of the coolest pieces of evidence we ever got is Jim was an inspiring musician and he wanted to record music. And so he made 3 sound studios in his apartment that are off to the left. We had an a cappella club that actually came in one day to do a day tour and they went into one of Jim's studios and they started singing. Now remember guys, a cappella is, that high pitched voice, the keys there. Well, they were recording the incident and in the background, you can hear Jim singing.
Nice.
Wow.
Plain as day, low voice singing. And the girls came out and they were looking at us like, whoa. And I was like, yeah, that's Jim. This is South Pittsburgh Hospital for you.
Wow.
Once we started telling the truth about Jim and who he really is, that we get more interactions like that with him. He's more friendly. He's more playful. He does all sorts of really cool things. So I think that's one of the things that's really kind of bad about the paranormal too, is that no location in particular, but I think there's a lot of locations that got a lot of myths going on, and I think they not so much the owners, but you know how I don't know how you do it, but it's the old what's that game, the telephone game where you tell somebody and that story keeps changing. And I think there's a lot of locations out there that have the same type of resonance in them that like one of the things that everybody said, oh, you got a creeper in your building, you got a creeper in your building. And we don't like that terminology because we don't know who it is. Being a hospital, we could have a handicapped person who is literally crawling on all fours. And that person or that resident, they deserve the respect that you or I get.
Oh, for sure.
We don't do that kind of a thing. But I think some of the paranormal, and we all know this because we fight this on a daily basis, it's people make more money on YouTube. They make more money doing things when it's bad and it's scary and it's entertaining. And I think so a lot of people, like in Jim's instance, when you market somebody as being a bad person and you market them as being evil and all this other stuff, I think people are more apt to kind of come out and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of neat because now that Jim is actually playful and fun, he's more active now than he's ever been since I've been investigating the hospital. So I think it's really neat when we get to take a resident who can't speak for themselves and actually begin to put the pieces of the puzzle together and really tell their life story the way it was meant to be instead of the way it telephoned out down the road.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
That was a lot of information.
I'd rather hang out with a good Jim than a bad Jim.
Well, I was, like I said, I was shocked. We were in that, in what's the foyer of the hospital. And I mean, it was so forceful. I literally thought somebody was standing behind me and just grabbed a handful of hair and yanked my head back. And it's one of those things that even to this very day, you really scratch your head like, did that really happen?
Yeah.
We had a phenomenon that was going on for quite some time in the hospital that I still can't figure out. And I think out of all the investigating I've ever done, I think this is one of the only locations I've ever run into it. We have a doctor. His name is Dr. Taylor. He's one of the original doctors of the hospital when they opened it. He was the one who actually did a lot of the plans of the hospital, helped to run the finances. I mean, he was a very integral part of the hospital. One thing that was really unique about back then is that it wasn't uncommon for doctors, nurses, patients to smoke in hospitals. I mean,
Mhm.
I remember going to the hospital and you'd see somebody smoking a cigarette right in the waiting room, or sometimes even in a patient room when you just got out of surgery. Well, Dr. Taylor was known for smoking a pipe in the hospital. He was also known for using his pipe to accentuate when you were doing something wrong. Like some mothers use the old wooden spoon.
Yeah.
Dr. Taylor used his pipe, and when somebody come in and they weren't kind of doing the medical thing that they wanted them to do, he'd slam it down, like, "I told you you should be taking your medicine," or whatever it was. Well, he used a very specific tobacco called rabbit tobacco. It's very, very sweet. It's got a very, very unique smell to it. And there are times in the hospital when you're in there when you'll actually smell that tobacco. And what's even more neat is if you catch it right and you turn a flashlight on or your phone upside down and you kind of aim your light up into the what do you call it, upwards, you'll actually see the cloud of smoke. Like
Wow.
you'll literally, we've had the experiences so many times where we've had guests come out, they'll be sitting down and we'll be doing an SD session in the Tri-City waiting area, and you'll hear them start coughing. Like the guest will start coughing. You're like,
Hmm.
what's wrong? It's like smoky here. Turn a flashlight on them and they're just engulfed in this big cloud of smoke. I've never seen it happen anywhere else before. It was just so unique, and we've had so many groups come out and experience it that nobody can figure it out. We actually had a group one night come out, and it was really kind of neat. We had a group one night come out, and we were in the Tri-City ER waiting area, and it happened. And this guy looks at me, flashes his flashlight in my eyes, and he goes, "You've got this place rigged. This doesn't happen." I'm like, dude, I'll take down ceiling tiles. I said, I'll strip naked down to my underwear so you know it's not on me. I said, you tell me what you want me to do to prove to you that this is really happening. And as we're sitting there talking, he's like, "No, I've been doing this for a long time. This is just unusual." I said, "Well, come on, let's go take a walk and we'll discuss it." So as we're walking through the hallway, he walked into the cloud of smoke. Like it was there, like Dr. Taylor was kind of heading us down the corridor, and it's like right there. And he was like, "Oh, well, you're behind," because I was behind him. He said, "So it can't be you." And I'm like, "Let's do it. Let's open ceiling tiles." I said, let's exhaust every possible avenue so you don't think that we're rigging the building." So he's like, "All right." So pulled out the ladder. We're like searching everywhere. And he's like, "Dude, that was just amazing." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, it happens pretty regularly." And so as we were actually searching and we were doing it, looking through there, the rest of the group was still doing the Estes method in that other area. And Dr. Taylor actually went back to that area, and the cloud of smoke reappeared again while we were actually hunting down what he thought we had the building rigged at. So it was really, really neat. But that was kind of an experience, and we've got it on film and on video. And we had I think one of the best groups that we have in our area that's local is their Chattanooga research team, and they came out to try to debunk it, and they left scratching their heads.
Hmm.
Like this is a very scientific team. They're very meticulous. It happened to them on 3 or 4 separate occasions. They got it filmed. It happened in different locations in the building, and they were just like, "We can't figure this out." And I'm like, "I can't figure it out." But yeah, just really, 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 really kind of a neat situation.
Sounds like it. So let's jump up the road. I would think it's up the road to Harriman Hospital.
So here, yeah, Harriman is east. So Harriman is really unique. Harriman is about 168,000 square feet. So we're only about 20,000 square feet smaller than Waverly. When you pull up to the building, it's set up kind of very similar to South Pittsburgh, where a lot of people pull up and they're like, "Oh my God, this is as big as the hospital is." Because you pull up and it's a 4-story, it's the tallest building in the city, but it's only a 4-story building. It looks like a cube. And you kind of pull up and you're kind of like, "Well, on TV, it looks a lot bigger. You're advertising, it looks a lot bigger." And then you walk in and you realize that the whole back of the hospital spans the whole city block in Harriman.
Hmm.
So it's about 168,000 square feet. That building was actually built in 1938. They put an expansion on in the 50s, 70s, and 90s. So what's really, really unique about this hospital, what's really, really cool is they didn't do much renovations when they went from like year to year. So like a good example, the 1938 building, we have thick marble that's actually made up of the nurses station that's still there and still intact. And you can see the different types of systems that they were using in the building. Just really, 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 really cool building. And I'm being texted. Sorry, guys.
No, you're
But yeah,
good.
really kind of unique. And the building has expanded and time again, and they moved like the ER has been moved like a bunch of different times. The ICU's been moved a bunch of different times. What's really, really, really unique about Harriman that I think a lot of other cities don't have is, and I'm not kidding you guys, do some research on Harriman. It is probably the most cursed town in all of Tennessee.
Hmm.
So everything from fires to floods to Harriman, Tennessee has had everything burned down. I think the high school is burned down twice. On our property alone, we've had two separate hotels that burned down. It just is it's a beautiful city, but it's like it's cursed. Like they'll go 25 years with absolutely nothing happening, and then they'll have the Great Flood. They had a huge flood that wiped out all of downtown. Then they had a tornado, and then there was a fire, and I mean, it's just, I don't know. I just can't figure it out. So
Wow.
we talked to a lot of people, and they're kind of like they think that the ground was cursed by Indians,
Uh-huh.
because back in the old day they actually stole the land from the Indians.
Hmm.
And I'm going to get the history right, or wrong, so I'm not going to really talk about it much because I'm still learning it. But supposedly they actually took the city hall and moved it to a different town for a day just so that they could steal Harriman. Like I said, you got to do
Interesting.
it was really interesting, and I probably got it all wrong.
It's weird.
Okay, so they took the capital of Tennessee and they moved it to Kingston for the day to steal the property from the Indians. Is that correct? Okay. So yes. So they took the capital of Tennessee and moved it to Kingston for the day, so they could steal the property from the Indians and build the city.
Wow.
So that's what I said. So I think, and I'm just going off, Indian lore. I think they kind of put a curse on the property.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, but it's one of those hospitals that I will tell you, I will doing this as long as I have, I will put this location up against the most active hospitals in pretty much all of the world. This place is absolutely off the hook.
Hmm.
So when we initially went to go purchase the hospital, it came to us that they were going to tear it down. It was going to cost taxpayers about $2.5 million just to tear the building down, and then a couple $1 million more to grade the land and make it safe again to rebuild on it. So it was going to cost taxpayers quite a bit of money. We read it in the newspaper, so we went out there and said, "Hey, give us the chance to do something with it. Let's see if we can make some tax money. Let's see if we can, kind of save a historic location." And the city and the industrial board were real gracious with us. We went ahead and purchased the building and done investigations. But before we purchased the building, we wanted to make sure the building was active. I mean, you don't want to spend a lot of money on a bunch of bricks
Yeah.
and hope that there's something going on. So the very first time we go in there, we're walking around with the mayor, and the mayor's kind of showing us, the layout of the building. And at that point in time, the city was taking care of it, which they did a really nice job. But there were vandals breaking in. We were showing kind of the mayor how people were getting in and out. They weren't disrespectful. They weren't doing anything like spray painting or destroying anything, but we could tell people were getting in and out of the building. So at that point in time, we were telling them that, once word gets out and the bad people start breaking in, you're going to have a lot of issues. You're going to,
Yeah.
you know how that is. They go after the copper, they go after this, they go after that. So we're like, we need to get this done and we need to get the building secured before they get in. So they were really, really on board with it. So we went that evening. We gathered our group from OSPH and some other people. And that evening, we went to do our first initial ghost hunt in the building. And I would say, I don't even know, maybe 25, 30 minutes in, we walk up to the second floor area where they have the ORs and the recovery area. It was the operating wing of the hospital. And one of the girls see a man. They saw a man standing behind one of the windows. And she kind of got freaked out because the first thing we thought was, we're the first group in here. It's at night. Somebody broke in. They're utilizing the building for whatever reason they are. And so we ended up locking up the girls into one of the rooms, and then us men, us testosterone-filled men with guns, decided to start chasing this guy around. and couldn't find him. It was like he just literally disappeared. Couldn't find him at all. So we kind of secured that area and we kind of branched out and looked around other locations and he was just gone. So we let the girls out of the room and we start back to doing our investigation. And one of the girls sees him again. It's plain as day. He's standing in the same location that he was before, behind a door. And the hospitals have the little glass windows in them, so you can kind
Yeah.
of see from section to section. Well, he was like standing there looking at us. So we all kind of started chasing him around, and we're literally chasing him around in a circle. We're all seeing him. I mean, we're all following this guy around in a circle. When you get the chance to come to you have off to the side, you actually have the locker rooms where the nurses got to change and shower and that kind of a thing, which is kind of behind the operating rooms, behind the nurses station as well. So we're kind of doing this big circle. And so finally, we all see him go into this room. And we saw the door open. We saw him walk into the room. And we're like, at this point in time, we're all thinking, we caught him, caught somebody for real. He's just a little smarter than we are or whatever. So we walk into the room. There's no way in, no way out except for that one door and no man in that room, just us. And I remember one of my staff members looked at me and he says, "You're buying that effing hospital, right?" And I said, "Yep, we're calling tomorrow morning to making the deal."
Nice.
But that whole evening was just active as can be. I mean, I think everybody in the group saw full body apparition. We saw shadow figure. We had footsteps. We had disembodied voices. I mean, it was like it was almost like the building was saying, "Buy me. We've got stories to tell. We want to come out. We want to interact with your guests." So ever since then, we've been doing a lot of investigations, and everybody that comes is just having remarkable experiences. So it's like I said, in my opinion, it's probably one of the most active locations I've ever stepped foot in.
Very cool.
That's awesome. Carrie, do you have any questions you want to ask from your little sheet you have?
My little notepad, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so this one you touched on a little bit before, but I was just curious what that conversation was like before the first building that you decided to buy. Like, how did that go?
Um, I guess if you really want the truth, it got to the point where we were spending so much money traveling the country, like it became an addiction. I mean,
Yeah.
people don't realize that like we were spending, $1,000, $1,500, $200,000 or $200,000 a weekend,
Mhm.
for our family to go from here to wherever to do investigations. And I said, you know what? I said, with all this money that we're spending, why don't we just buy a location? Like, why don't we just start looking for a location and buy it and get involved in it, and do it that way? And so we did. We started looking for locations, and it's really challenging. And I think a lot of people don't understand how really it's a very balancing act with these old locations. Like a good example is, I mean, most of them are in pretty bad condition. I know you and I, we've all kind of traveled throughout them. One thing that I want to, if I ever meet the man who came up with flat roofs, I'm going to slap that guy, because one of the issues that us building owners have is we can't keep our roofs from leaking.
Mhm.
We fix a leak over here, and within 3 weeks later, it migrates over here. And the scary thing is I don't think a lot of people realize that the most expensive part of the building is the roof.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ridiculously expensive. And to maintain them, and we're putting on sections of OSPH because honestly, we can't afford to do it all at one time. So we're doing sections at OSPH, and we're looking 30, 40, $50,000 a section.
Mhm.
So I mean, it becomes a very big balancing act between keeping the building safe and leak free and keeping them, pretty and nice, to, charging people to come in and utilize them. So you've got that real fine line between the two, because I mean, as an investigator myself, there is a point where it's just too expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name any locations out there, but we shop around, and some of the
Yeah.
locations we're looking at like, oh my God, who can afford to do that?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the other locations who are like us, we're kind of in the middle and reasonable, and then you got locations that are really, really inexpensive. But so we try to make it as affordable as we can for the size of our locations and to upkeep them.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's kind of a balance, And that was one of the things I didn't think I really realized what I was getting into
Yeah.
before I walked into the building and realized that, Tennessee isn't supposed to have freezes, but when
Yeah.
it does and your water main freezes and you have to shell out $22,000 to put a new water main in, you don't realize that, yeah, it gets costly. And
Wow.
so it becomes this point in time where it's a real love relationship because
Mhm.
most of us owners aren't, rich people by any stretch of the imagination. We're doing it because we love to meet people like you. We love to do it. We love to keep our residents safe, and it becomes really a labor of love.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So are you are is to it, or you think you'll be expanding or
I don't know. We talk about it all the time. There's a couple of one of the things that I think one of the things that I think really catches our fancy is I'd like to find a jail, something nowhere near as big as like Western State Penitentiary or Missouri,
Mhm.
something that's a little bit smaller, but something that's kind of got that dark. Well, most jails have dark histories, but something that it's got that kind of a history. I think that's something that we're looking forward or trying to look for now. I know that we've got some really good friends over at Scotts County Jail up there, Chris and Miranda, that do just a fantastic job with their jail. And I think that's something that we're really kind of focusing on is trying to find a pretty cool jail.
All right. And then the only other thing I was thinking now, at the very beginning, you were talking about how you're a little skeptic, kind of, that's kind of what got you into it, curiosity and all that. And then you had an experience that pretty much solidified it for you. Would you be willing to share what happened, or is that more of a private thing?
Oh, oh no, the experience I had was with the experience that really, really kind of solidified my belief in the paranormal was when I had the experience at South Pittsburgh with the nurse.
Mhm.
Um, Prior to that, I mean, I've had EVPs, but that one was to this very day still kind of awe-inspiring. And it's really funny because we talk about skepticism and all other stuff, and as a building owner and having all these experiences, I'm still very skeptical. I
Mhm.
still don't know what we're interacting with. Now, I don't want to go down this road really, but I'm still not a believer that, we got people, especially being in the Bible Belt, who's like, everything's demonic. Oh, you're
Yeah.
doing this with demons, you're doing that with demons. And I don't necessarily find that to be true because I've been doing this so long. And a lot of us have. I mean, we come in contact with a lot of people who've been doing this for, even longer than I have, 30, 40 years, and never really had an experience that they would call demonic.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I'm kind of a firm believer, and I'm a pretty religious person. I was brought up Catholic, which if you guys are from the Midwest, you're probably brought up Catholic too.
Yeah.
Um, but so I have a very, big belief system in religion and God and the devil and hell and all their stuff. But I also believe, and this is kind of my belief, and this is kind of the way I can justify what we do, is I believe that a person is made up of a spirit and a soul. And I think that the parts interact with each other, but they're not exclusive. So I believe that when you pass away, your soul goes to where it's supposed to, whether it's heaven or hell or whatever the afterlife has its plan for you to be. But I believe the spirit or the energy of us is what sticks around and stays here. And I think that they're not exclusive to each other. I think that energy can become intelligent. I
Mhm.
also think it can be residual because I think that energy does get trapped in buildings and maybe even dolls and that kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
I think that energy is what we are interacting with. And I mean, if you believe in Newton's law, where energy can't be created or destroyed,
Mhm.
well, we're 100% energy. I mean,
Yeah.
100%. So when
Mhm.
you die, where does that go?
Right. Yep.
So my belief is that your energy is still here and it's still interacting somehow, some way. I don't know. I can't figure it out. I mean, and we can get into really some real heavy thought about that because, then you get into the second and third dimensions and people are, I mean, you can go really way out there. And not that I don't believe it or not believe it. It just, I mean, there's just so many different aspects of the way we're going. But so when somebody always confronts me and they're like, "Oh, you're going to hell. You're a demon worshiper and you're doing this," I'm like, no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm far from that. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mess with that stuff. I want to live a long, healthy life too, and be able to, spend it with my daughters and my friends and all that other stuff. And so I'm not, we're not cutting chickens' heads off in the basement sitting in a pentagram, trying to cast things.
Yeah.
But I truly think that, like I said, your energy is here. And I think a lot of times that if you have loved ones, or especially in a hospital where you spent your whole life, helping people, I think a lot of that energy stays behind. And I think that that energy can be converted into, intelligent conversations from time to time.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah.
I could have thought so.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's true, I don't know. I'm in my 50s, so I don't have a whole lot longer to go. But when it comes around, I'll be the first one giving you an EVP saying,
All
yes,
right.
how it
Yeah.
works.
Nice.
I'll take you up on that for sure. Yeah, that's kind of, a big question. That's what people want to know.
Well, I think that's why we do it. I think it's really fascinating, and I think we all have I think, and it's really funny because I fly back and forth to Chattanooga a lot from Chicago because I'm there every other week, and it's really funny because a lot of times I'll wear Haunted Old South Pittsburgh T-shirts, or to the point now where I've been doing this 7 years or almost 8 years going back and forth, that a lot of people recognize me. TSA recognizes me. They're all like, "Hey, so how was your week?" So a lot of the people who are in line behind me are overhearing our conversation. And I'll
Yeah.
sit in the waiting room and somebody will walk up to me and go, "So you're a ghost hunter, huh? Let me tell you this story I had in my house." And all of a sudden they start opening up and everything's a ghost story. And you're kind of like, well, wait a minute here. You know, it's the same people who are the ones who are going, "Oh, you're chasing demons," but they're the ones who are telling you that, what, in my house I couldn't find my car keys, and I know I put them on the kitchen table, but they were on the other table across the room, and I'm the only one who lives there. And
Yeah.
you're, well, do you think maybe you have a loved one who just may be messing around with you? And
Yeah.
like, well, what brings me? And then all of a sudden you're on a 2-hour flight from Chattanooga to Chicago with that same person, and they're going on and on and on about little Betsy and her seeing this imaginary friend, and it gets really, really deep. And then I think once that veil is lifted and everybody starts talking about it, I think everybody has had an experience. It's just whether or not they want to admit what their experience was or is.
Yeah. Or they need to find the right person to talk to about it.
Right. Well, and I think that's true because I think we're not really socially accepted yet. I think there's still a lot of people out there who, like I said, when we worked with Harriman, a lot of people thought we were sitting in the basement and we were conjuring up demons with, killing goats. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, we don't sit in a circle. We don't do that kind of a thing. I mean, yeah, we set our butts on a cold hallway until 2 o'clock, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes, but
Hmm.
we're not doing the things that you think we're doing. We're hoping to have an experience and we're using tools to do it, but we're not going out of our way to, conjure things up or to do satanic rituals or anything like that.
Right.
We're, the right way. So it's kind of unique, like I said. And I think once people get to realize that they've had an experience and all we're doing is trying to validate those experiences, like when I'm on an airplane, and that's what I tell her, I'm like, we're not chasing them, we're validating. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh, I get it now. So
Yeah.
it's kind of the way I think that we go about explaining it to people who are, like I said, disbelievers or skeptics or that kind of a thing. Because I haven't run into anybody yet who hasn't had some sort of experience.
Right. All right. Well, that was those are my questions. So
All right.
back to you,
Yeah,
Matt.
you guys make this very easy.
So while we're on the topic of hospitals, have you ever been to Old Hospital on College Hill?
I have not been out there yet. That's in West Virginia, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah, have not been out there.
So I was just going to kind of see like how you would compare that to your locations, but since you haven't been there,
I don't know. I can tell you, if you go to Harriman Hospital, I can give you kind of a background. Harriman Hospital literally looks like if somebody with a couple $1 million would put a new roof on and fix a couple areas of the hospital up, you could open it tomorrow as a hospital. The four stories that are in the front of the hospital look brand new. I mean, they're in such great shape. Harriman kept a really good shape of them. As a matter of fact, we've had a couple of movies shoot there. I'm going to plug her, but if any of you ever heard of Goldilocks, they're actually a rock band that is actually out of Nashville. They just filmed a music video there, and I think it's called Talking to Myself. And they filmed in the hospital. It looks phenomenal. But because we have four different, the 30s, the 50s, the 70s, the
yeah,
90s, it's a really great place for people to come out and film.
Oh,
Because you can go back in time and kind of, like as a doctor is growing up, you can go back and you can get different eras in there.
right.
So we've had a couple of movies filmed in there. One of them is called Bunker Heights, which I think is being released here around Halloween. We've had a bunch of PBS shows come out. So Harriman is actually really, really great shape. I would say it's probably in the top 10% of buildings in terms of condition. I would say South Pittsburgh is probably in the top maybe 25 to 30% in terms of conditions, where it's still in really, really good shape. And that's something that I think our team, I have a team of 40 at both locations, that we keep the buildings really clean. I
Mhm.
mean, we don't, allow for mold or cobwebs or that kind of thing. And one of the reasons why we believe is that if you're walking through a hallway and there's a cobweb in the hallway and you get that cobweb on your face,
Yeah.
a lot of it can be mistaken for, a spiritual encounter. So if we can keep those areas clean and somebody's walking down the hall and they feel that spider web and they turn around and look, we know that we're doing our due diligence by making sure that they're not getting a false experience by
Yeah.
running into a dirty hallway.
Yeah, that's
But
excellent. Yep.
I think the most important thing and what we concentrate the most on is, and you guys have all been there, I mean, is really keeping the mold levels to a minimum. They're old buildings. They have a tendency to have moisture inside. And I think it's a daily operation for us to make sure that the mold doesn't come back and we're constantly cleaning and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I mean, and as I said before, it's challenging. These old buildings they've got a lot of problems.
Oh
They've
yeah.
got a lot of issues. Let's call it what it is. They're beautiful on the outside, but man, the technology that they used when they were built, in terms of structural, our buildings are going to last until way beyond us. But the
Yeah.
problem is as time has gone by, the interior, like for example, the cast iron piping. We use PVC
Mhm.
now. We don't have issues with leaks, but
Yeah.
everything was cast iron back then. So, I mean, as time and technology has progressed, the buildings nowadays are becoming a lot easier to maintain, whereas the older buildings, we run into all sorts of issues like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I kind of keep toying around with the idea. So like, we have all our investigations lined up for this year, and I'm already starting to plan for next year. And it's
You
like,
need to get down to Tennessee, man.
well, it's like one of the things I had talked about a couple months ago, and it's still in my mind, is do a haunted hospital road trip. And your two locations are on that list.
What's really unique, what's really cool about us is number one, if you guys do decide to come down, they're about 2 hours apart. We work with a bed and breakfast in both towns that allow you to check in late and leave late. One of them is actually above a pizza parlor right down in downtown Harriman. So if you call them and tell them that you're investigating Harriman, they'll actually deliver the pizza and leave it on your what do you call it, kitchen counter for when you to come back when the investigation is over.
Wow.
But we have learned that we work with a lot of the local Airbnbs to try and keep costs down,
Mhm.
because like I said, it gets expensive, especially
Oh, it
when you're in
does.
Minnesota or you're coming from the northern states. Or I mean, we had a group that came all the way out from I can't think of the name of the town, the state, or the country. But they actually come from a different country, flew in just to be at OSPH in Harriman, and they spent a ton of money. So we try to help them out by using our local people to, the Airbnb and that kind of thing. So we do have those options for you. But they're 2 hours apart, so it's really kind of nice that what you can do is head up to one of them, stay at the Airbnb, and then rest up, come to the other locations, do your investigation, go to the Airbnb, and then head home. So it's really really kind of cool the way we got them set up, and 2 hours apart. So, and it's neat because both hospitals, even though they're hospitals, have completely different feel and completely different atmospheres. I mean, you would not think that you're walking into two. You would think that all hospitals kind of have the same feel.
Yeah.
South Pittsburgh is very homey feeling. You walk into South Pittsburgh, it's very welcoming. It's a very, very just welcoming location. You walk into Harriman Hospital, it's very daunting. I think it's very scary. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable in the hospital walking alone by myself in the hospital. It's very overwhelming with how big it is. But it's two completely separate, if I may use the word haunts, but it's two completely different separate haunts. It's just they have their own personalities, they have their own feeling. I mean, and it's really kind of a unique situation. So, and I'm glad we get to own both of them because if I feel like being at home, I go to South Pittsburgh. If I feel like having a crap scared out of me, I just head over to Harriman.
So have you ever had any teams like investigate like both in the same night and kind of split up and do one and then the other at the same time?
We did that once, and because somebody double booked, we ended up, yeah. It's really kind of a challenge. I mean, you got two locations, and Brooke and myself have done it a couple of times where we write down somebody as going to O, which is Harriman, and they're really supposed to be at OSPH. And so we did have a group that was kind of neat. We had a group that I think it was a year or two ago, where one group showed up at OSPH, the other group showed up at OSPH, and one was supposed to be a Harriman. And so it got really kind of crazy. So they ended up splitting up, and one of them went to Harriman, the other one stayed at OSPH, and then halfway through the night they switched, and they just drove the location. We gave them extended time because we screwed it up, but it was really unique because they said the same thing. They were like, after we talked to them the next day, they were like, wow, for somebody who owns two locations, you'd think that the consistency and kind of the feeling of both the hospitals would be the same. And everybody in the group kind of agreed that, Harriman is definitely a different feeling and a different type of just haunt than South Pittsburgh is. And it was kind of the same thing. A lot of them were like, we're really comfortable walking around South Pittsburgh. We weren't on edge. It was just a really, really great investigation. We went over to Harriman, and they're like, we're constantly looking over our shoulder. They felt like, it was just a different kind of feel. And I was like, well, was it a bad feeling? And they're like, no, it was just kind of a scary feeling. It was kind of like somebody was always watching you. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Harriman has only been open for 13 years, or it's been closed for 13 years, and we only opened it for 2 years now. So I think you've got a lot of potential spirits that really haven't had the opportunity to tell their story.
Yeah.
Whereas Pittsburgh has been, it's been in the mainstream for quite some time. So you got a lot of spirits. You're like, yeah, I think I'll communicate today. Where I think Harriman is a little bit more like, no, they're kind of fighting or chomping at the bit to tell their stories. And I think they make it a little creepier over there by doing that, by kind of rushing to communicate with you. So I think that they're kind of waiting in line, kind of following you around. We've literally had teams that are there that are like, we're walking down what we call the city hallway, and every time we turn around, we feel like there's somebody walking with us. And we do have security cameras do that. There was one night that we actually caught. There was a team of 3 walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden you see a 4th person kind of manifest behind them, and then kind of disappear. And we actually showed the group, and it was really cool because the girl that was in the back of the group, she's like, I thought there was somebody following me, but I wasn't really sure. And we kind of showed her the video, and that really creeped her out. But yeah, she was like, oh, that was really cool. And I was like, well, this is what you're here for. I mean, for that kind of interaction. So yeah, kind of 2 completely different situations or kind of feels to the hospitals.
That's very cool.
I think we definitely might have to try that next year.
Yeah.
And it is worth the trip. I used to drive, like I said, before I owned South Pittsburgh, we used to drive. So there used to be a place called Hale's Bar, it's maybe 15 minutes from the hospital. So what we used to do is we used to come down from Chicago, and we used to go to OSPH and rent the night there. And then we go stay at the cabins at Hale's, and end up investigating Hale's, and then going home. So we do the same thing. We do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday trip. And Hale's used to do investigations, and now I think I think they make whiskey and they have a restaurant there. So they kind of went a different direction from the paranormal, probably making way more money than we are. But they went like a different direction than the paranormal. So they kind of closed it down to that kind of a situation. But that's what we used to do. We used to do kind of a road trip. And I think, I don't know where you guys are coming from, but like downtown Chicago, well, actually where I live, I'm north of Chicago. It's about a 9-hour drive from my front door to OSPH's front door.
So that would probably be about 15 for us. We're up
where
in
are you guys?
the Minneapolis area.
Oh yeah. So then what you need to do is you need to go from Minneapolis, go to Edinburgh in Iowa, and kind of make a big L, and then come down to us and make a week-long event of it.
Yeah.
Road trip.
Well, that's kind of what we're doing this summer. We're doing a big road trip in June. We're going to be at ISS and Billy Creek, and then Waverly, then up to Post Town, and then Old Hospital on College Hill, and then we're ending at Fairfield for their Paracon.
Gotcha. Well, if you're in Louisville, they'll yell at me because I see Louisville. If you're out in Louisville, it's about 3 hours to South Pittsburgh from Louisville.
That's not bad.
But no, not really that bad at all. And really, honestly, when I used to drive it, I fly it now. But really, there's in the 9 hour drive, there's probably about 3.5 hours where you just want to put a bullet in your head because it's really long, right?
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's flat. There's really nothing to look at other than some windmills. Once you hit that top part of Kentucky, the lower part of Illinois, especially if you're going down 57, it is absolutely stunning. If you
Mhm.
guys do it in spring or fall, when the either they're blooming or the plants are blooming or they're changing colors for fall, it is awe-inspiring. I mean, I can't say enough beautiful things about Kentucky and Tennessee. I'm really fortunate to be there because it is just the people are great. The state is just absolutely breathtaking. I mean, on a fall day, if you're standing, OSPH is actually at the foothill of South Pittsburgh Hospital, and when you come pulling up to the building and it's fall and you're sitting on that backdrop of oranges and reds and yellows, I mean, it's almost kind of an eye jerk. I mean, your eyes start to get a little glossy, and you're kind of like, I mean, Mother Nature just really is on display in fall in Tennessee. It's just a magnificent state. Oh, by the way, the building's kind of haunted too, so we'll throw that in.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll be actually down in your area Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. My daughter and I are going down to Chicago for 3 days.
You're not going to a Cubs game, I hope.
And we're not going to a Cubs game. There's some tour of some YouTubers she follows that we're going to Thursday night. And then going to head into downtown on Friday, then meet up with a couple of friends for dinner. And then before we head back Saturday, we're just going to go do a 2 hour tour of Old Joliet.
Oh, you'll like that. It's really cool. So
Never been there, so
Joliet's about an hour and 15 minutes from my house. It's west of me. So where are you heading to in Chicago? Just make
so
sure you go to Billy Goats.
I've never been to Billy Goats.
Oh, go to Billy Goats for breakfast, and make sure you hit Lou Malnati's Pizza. That's two of Chicago's best.
Yeah, I'm not for sure really what our plan is on Friday. Just kind of, do whatever. Just enjoy being down there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You're coming at the right time of year too. If you're going to be here this weekend, here I will tell you what the weather's going to be like. But I think you're actually coming at a really good time. Should be. I think it's dry all weekend too, so you'll be doing good. Oh, I lied. It's going to rain Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it's in the mid 50s. I'm sorry.
It'll
Let me.
it'll change.
Yeah, it
Maybe.
does. Well, if you're close enough to the shoreline, yeah, I can definitely change. So the Windy City, it can definitely change in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I can't remember whatever suburb is. We're up by staying by the airport because the event we're going to is at the Copernicus,
Okay, so you're going to be in Des Plaines or Rosemont?
somewhere up in that area. Yeah, and we'll probably take the train in on Friday, and so we don't have to drive and spend
Right.
$1,000 on parking.
That's a good choice. I think
Yep.
the train will run down on the weekend. If she's a student, I think it's like $7 a person.
Yeah, it's not too
Either
bad.
way,
So
yeah. Yeah, and then you can Uber around. But yeah,
yep.
hit Michigan Avenue, take your daughter down to Water Tower Place.
Oh yeah, she
Uh,
loves. We were down there a couple years ago, and she loves Chicago.
right. Yeah, Chicago's got a lot to offer. I'm getting to the age though where I really like woods and mountains. I don't like people so much and traffic.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
But it's definitely beautiful. Definitely a beautiful city. And I mean, the shoreline, you can't, I mean, it's just gorgeous looking out, into Lake Michigan. And if you guys go head over to Navy Pier is real pretty and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So you guys
Well, I
should have
got
a great weekend.
relatives that live down there that have been there since like 77. So like, I grew up going out in Chicago like 5, 6, 7 times a year. And people think I'm weird. I go, I feel safer walking around downtown Chicago than downtown Minneapolis.
Oh, really? Now, see,
Yeah.
I felt that way for a very long period of time. And the reason why I'm making fun of you is I'm a White Sox fan. I'm sorry.
No, my
But
daughter's a White Sox fan, so
I'm a White Sox fan and a Hawks fan, Blackhawks fan, and played hockey most of my life. And we used to go downtown all the time to see the White Sox and Blackhawks. And I'm to the point where we won't even go down there anymore. The media hides a lot of shootings and stabbings that go on in Chicago. If you stay in the areas where it's very touristy, they protect that a little bit more. But if you walk
yeah.
off the path, you need to be real careful.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, like Michigan Avenue is real safe. Like if you're doing the touristy things downtown,
Yeah.
not a lot of to worry about. But I mean, and the funny thing is, Chicago is really unique is that you could be on one road and the next road over is scary. It's, really scary. And growing up as a kid, we had Cabrini Green, which is right next to Oak Street Beach, and they're literally a block apart. And and I'm not trying to be offensive or anything, but as a white boy, you don't go through Cabrini Green. I mean, you're guaranteed to get shot at. But you had to go through Cabrini Green to get to Oak Street Beach. And as a kid, we used to drive through there, and oh, it was bad. If anybody's ever seen the movie Candyman, that actually was filmed at Cabrini Green.
Really?
Wow.
Where they have the cages all around the building and all that stuff. That movie is actually filmed right before they tore Cabrini Green down. I think now it's a luxury down home. So, but as a child, that was a place you stayed away from. Now they just moved, a couple blocks over, and it's kind of like I said, kind of a really scary area. So stay on Michigan Avenue.
Oh yeah, that's where we'll be most of the
State Street.
time. Yeah, she's only 12, so I'm not going to take her to the scary areas.
Right. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful time. Like I said, you guys will have a lot of fun, especially this time of year, because everything here is starting to sprout. All of our, because I think you guys are a couple weeks behind us, aren't you, in terms of spring? All of our
it's
cherry trees are
been
starting
the weather here has been on and off. It's like a roller coaster. Like Sunday was like 70 degrees, and today was like 40, and
It sounds like Minnesota.
it doesn't want to cooperate yet.
Oh yeah.
Well, anyways, for the paranormal, I don't think I have any other questions. Do you, Carrie?
No, I got them out.
All right.
We made this really easy.
It was very informative.
I love the little alien. I love the little alien next to you,
Oh,
or Martian. He's cute.
Oh, and you can see it behind me how much I love Chicago. There's a poster behind me.
yeah.
I saw the Star Wars and the Chicago and all that other good stuff. I mean, you're a cool dude, man.
Oh, yeah.
Star Wars. I was looking for Lego sets, but I don't see any Lego
Oh,
sets.
they're back over in the corner there. There's some Star Wars Lego sets back there.
All right, my kind of man.
And then let's see what else is back there. I don't know. There's
Gotta throw the lava lamp.
ghost equipment over by the lava lamp, and yeah, I got stuff. There's tons of stuff down here.
That is awesome.
All right. Well, we thank you for joining us tonight, and maybe we'll see each other down the road next year.
Well, I hope so. I hope you guys get down to Old South Pittsburgh and the Harriman. We'd love to have you guys. And like I said, I'm Ronnie D on Facebook. So if you have any questions or anything, throw me a private message. If you guys are thinking about coming down sometime and you need, the Airbnbs and that kind of stuff, we're more than happy to help, and we'll get you booked and we'll get you situated in the area. And like I said, I think truly, once you come down to South Pittsburgh and you come down to Harriman, I think you guys will probably make it a yearly event, especially come in spring and fall, because man, you just can't beat Tennessee. Just absolutely stunning with the mountains and all that good stuff. Oh, and the haunted buildings too.
Oh, we love haunted buildings.
You guys have a great night. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. You have a great night as well.
Good night, guys.
Yep. Bye.